Hi everyone. So we're up to the last few videos about close reading across the National 5 and the higher courses. What I'm going to do with this one is look at, as it says there, these effective conclusion questions. Now they don't come up all the time, they're not always completely direct, but it's another one of these things like the linking sentences that it might come up, and if it does, it's good to have at least covered it. And even if it doesn't, it's a very useful thing in other places. Again, quite a useful thing sometimes when it comes to the folio writing, depending on the choice of essay style and topic and stuff like that. So if we have a wee look at the way this kind of thing works, you basically being asked, why does the final paragraph of some article, whatever it happens to be, why does it work well as a final paragraph? So what is it about it that means it does, that it works well as a conclusion for something that wraps everything up? And to do that, you need to obviously ask, well, what's the job of a conclusion? The job of a conclusion is to make us feel like we have sort of revisited some of the key points. It might be to reinforce a key argument. It might be to leave us going away with a particular thought in our head, something like that. So generally, what you're going to do to answer this, you're going to look for a particular phrase somewhere in the easy way to do it, a particular phrase somewhere in the final paragraph that you can say this works well as part of a conclusion because it links back to this argument that ran through, paragraphs 1 and 4, that kind of thing. Sometimes though, you'd be looking maybe at a language choice that does the same thing, that revisits something earlier. So for argument's sake, if you had an article that at several points made use of maybe like a repeated structure, like a repeated sentence structure or something like that, like maybe a repeated list, and you saw the same kind of structure maybe 2 or 3 times in the essay or the article. If you then see it again in the conclusion, then you can certainly make the point of saying, well, the author has used a particular technique in order to sort of revisit a technique that is used throughout the essay and remind us of the point that it was making, or something like that. The other thing is sometimes it says there an effect that's relevant to conclusions. So like in theory, if it ended with the last sentence was a rhetorical question is maybe the most obvious example of that, where you could talk about, well, ending on a rhetorical question is effective because of the things it made us think about in relation to earlier points or something like that. More often than not, though, it's probably the first little bullet point there, the phrase that links back to an earlier idea. So if we have a wee look at an example here, it's obviously tricky to show you this one because really for it to work you want to be reading the entire text and then seeing this effective conclusion question at the end of it. But this one's actually from last year's National 5 past paper, so you can go back and see the whole text if you want and try and kind of understand it on those terms. But you do what the question says: select an expression and explain how it contributes to the passage's effective conclusion. Well, I've done it twice to show you 2 different options kind of thing, and these are very, very simple answers. You'd probably want to do a little bit more with them, but early fast food experiences from the first sentence of the conclusion obviously takes us back to this idea that when fast food was kind of first developing with McDonald's in the 80s, it was a time of kind of major change, for example. So that's definitely in there. That then this obviously goes into newness, and thrill. And I've looked at that one as well as a possible second point. You wouldn't need to at National 5, you would at higher. So this sums up the sort of key points of the paragraph. The fast food was different, it was futuristic, and it was exciting. Actually, it's not just summing up the key points of the paragraph, that's summing up the key points of the article itself, maybe a slightly more accurate thing to put in there. So it's summing up those kind of key points that have been made throughout about the fact that it is, different. So, maybe a bit hard to wrap your head around, but it was new, which we definitely got. And that big thing is this idea of it being a thrill. And if you go back and look at even the opening paragraph for that text, you look at the rhetorical questions at the end of that opening paragraph, you'll see how those kind of things click together. So as I say, a tricky one to show you in a video, probably best understood by looking at the past papers and then doing these, creating yourself something. If it's not there, the effective conclusion question, try and be able to explain for every conclusion how does it work well as a conclusion relative to the rest of the text. Okay, so might come up in the close reading, might not, but even if it doesn't, a very, very good thing to be thinking about when you come to write the final paragraph of your folio piece. Okay.